halfway line often includes the question, is this glass half full or is this glass half empty? Those who see the glass as half empty are thought of as pessimists. Pessimists are always worried that there simply will not be enough. Whatever is in the glass, there won't be enough. Those who see the glass as half full are thought of as optimists. Optimists always think there will be enough. Plenty in the glass, nothing to worry about, always enough. So will we run out or will we not have enough? Are we faced with scarcity or do we embrace the idea of abundance? Traditionally, those are the only two choices we have when we see a glass that is partially filled. Those were the questions that were facing the people of King Ahab's land when the drought was incredibly severe. The drought had been going on for some time and people were running out of everything. They were running out of water, they were running out of food, they were running out of ways to survive. 3 years without water, without rain in a desert environment is devastating. And people in Ahab's kingdom were dying of thirst and they were dying of hunger, for without water there was nothing to drink, and there was nothing with which they could grow their crops. Without crops, their animals were already long gone. The drought was causing loss of property, loss of land, and loss of life. Now the prophet Elijah had been hiding from King Ahab for quite some time alongside a desert wadi, which is a Middle Eastern term for a river valley. The river, however, had finally dried up, and God told Elijah to go to a woman's home, a widow, in the city of Sidon, which was on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. Now, Sidon was the hometown of Queen Jezebel. Yes, that Jezebel. And God expected Elijah, a Jewish prophet who was blamed for starting the drought, to go into a city filled with people who, like Queen Jezebel, did not believe in the one true living God, and there to find safety, to find shelter, food, and water. Knowing God that had cared for him thus far, against his better judgment, Elijah went. And as he entered the village, as he entered the city, he found a woman gathering sticks. Now Elijah, as he had been told, asked the woman for something to eat. Now, keep in mind that God had told Elijah to go to this city, and there he would find a woman who would provide for him. Well, the woman, the one that Elijah approached, told Elijah that she was gathering fuel for a final fire. She just needed a few sticks because she had a little bit of flour, a little bit of oil. She was going to make a small loaf of bread for her and her son. They were going to eat it and then wait to die. I don't know about you, but I would have figured I'd gone up to the wrong widow. How would God provide somebody to feed and shelter me, to care for a guest, be the one who had nothing to give? I would have gone and looked for a woman who had abundance, who had more than enough to share. And I would have probably apologized for intruding on this first woman, thanked her for her time, and wished her and her son as much best possibilities as I could. Because her and her resources, her will to live were almost gone, and she was rightfully pessimistic about the future. In my mind, it would have been time to move on, find the right widow, somebody who had abundance, settle back, and just enjoy it till the drought was over. Well, Elijah did not apologize, nor did he accept the woman's assessment of her scarcity. In fact, Elijah, somewhat selfishly, told the woman to go ahead and use her resources to make a small loaf of bread for him. And after he ate the bread, she, on faith, on this interloper's word, should go back to her jar, and there she would find more flour, she would find some more oil, and then she could make bread for herself and her son. And every day, Elijah said, as long as he stayed there, there would be enough resources, enough food and water for all 3 people in the home. See, Elijah didn't ask the traditional questions. He didn't ask if the glass was half empty. He didn't ask if the glass was half full. In fact, for Elijah, wondering if the glass was half empty or half full was simply the wrong question. Because let's face it, if we think the glass is half empty or half full, it's still going to run out. If we use anything in the glass at all, it's going to eventually be empty. Even if we do nothing, that glass is eventually going to be empty. So the question is not, is the glass half empty or half full? The question really is, how is that glass going to be refilled? How can we make sure that there's always something to go into that glass? Elijah knew the jar of meal and the jar of oil was always going to be refilled by God. He knew that his faith in God, his worship of God, allowed him to believe that there would be enough food for him and for his host family. So friends, let's think about that glass. If we see it as half empty, we're always going to feel need because we're always going to worry it's going to run out. If we see the glass as half full, we're going to feel abundance. But even if we feel abundance, that glass is still going to run out. If we stop looking at the glass in the traditional questions and ask ourselves simply, how is that glass going to be refilled? We'll always have enough. Even when we feel like there's not enough, there will be enough, because the glass half full or empty, the question of scarcity or abundance really depends on our connection to God. See, friends, we are all born with a God-shaped hole in the center of our being. And we can try to fill that hole with other stuff, with activities, with homes, with toys, with people, with jobs, with success, with wealth. But the more we try to do that, the more we'll realize that hole never gets filled. Because the more we try to fill it with other stuff, the emptier we will feel. But when we fill that God-shaped hole at the center of our beings with God, no matter what we have, we'll always have enough. In the middle of a drought, all Elijah had was bread and water every day, and he knew that he had more than enough. He had abundance. And why? Because he was filled with the presence of God and the confidence that God would give him exactly what he needed. The confidence that God would not only give him what he needed, but more than enough to share with others. Elijah knew that he would have enough to share as long as he worshiped God and God alone. Elijah knew he would not want for anything as long as he filled that God-shaped hole in the middle of his being with God's love, God's presence, and God's grace. So for Elijah, the glass was not half empty, it was not half full. The glass was always refilled by his connection to God. We can look at our lives, my friends, and say we don't have enough. Or we can count how blessed we are by what we have and recognize we have more than enough. We can look at our lives and say, well, I've got some stuff, but I need more. Got to fill that hole with stuff. And eventually we'll realize that that gives us no satisfaction, that gives us no contentment. And eventually return to God. And as people of God, when we see others who truly do not have enough, we'll recognize, like Elijah did, we have enough and plenty to share. It's that faith in God. It's asking God to fill our lives with what we truly need: love, forgiveness, presence, and grace. That's the real question. How do we refill that glass? How do we refill that hole at the center of our beings? By turning to God. That's part of the value of the sacrament of Holy Communion. I don't know about you, but there are times when that presence of God feels pretty empty. And I can wonder where God went, or why there isn't enough faith. And then it's time to come to a place where we can say, God, fill me up again. Fill me up with those things that really matter. Fill me up with your love, your presence, your forgiveness, your possibilities. And that's the sacrament of Holy Communion, where we come literally to be filled with God. Did you ever watch a child take communion? It's when it's in the little glasses, they look for the glass that's the fullest to make sure there's enough. Or when we're doing the intinction, the rip and the dip, as I call it, children will put their hands in up to the second knuckle because they want enough God. Well, friends, whether our glass has a drop or our bread has a drop, or if we put it in up to the second knuckle, we will have enough because we will have opened ourselves to God. And with God, there's plenty and there's enough to share. Amen?
Amen. Amen.
Jesus knew his followers would need to be reminded